I'm going to show you how to do a long tail tubular cast on for 1x1 rib and 2x2 rib. No matter which kind of ribbing you're doing, the first few steps are exactly the same. Begin by pulling out a tail about 4 times the length of the width you want to cast on. Make a slip knot. Slip that loop onto your needle and holding both strands of yarn like this, which should be familiar if you've done the normal long tail cast on. Then you're going to start by bringing the needle forwards under the front yarn towards the back over the back yarn, and then swing it under both yarns. Pull the yarns downwards and you can see that should make a stitch. And that's going to be a knit stitch eventually. Now you're going to work the purl stitch. So pull the needle backwards, put it under the back yarn, forwards and over the front yarn, swing it under both yarns. And then make sure you pull the yarns down to orientate the stitch right. Then you're going to just repeat those 2 steps until you have as many stitches cast on as you need. So come forwards, under the front yarn, towards the back, under the back yarn, swing it under both yarns, downwards. Then backwards, under the back yarn, forwards, over the front yarn, and under both. Make sure that the loops of the stitches are on the top and the bumps are all lined up along the bottom. So carry on, bring the needle forwards, under the front yarn, towards the back, over, under both yarns. Backwards, under the back yarn, forwards, under both yarns. When you've cast on all of your stitches, transfer the needle to your left hand for the next row. With your second needle, you have to work across these stitches. You can see that the first of my stitches has a strand of yarn across the bottom, like a purl bump, so that's a purl stitch. For the first 2 rows, you aren't going to work the purl stitches, you're just going to slip them with the yarn in front. So you want to insert your needle as if to purl, but just slip the stitch off the end. Then bring the yarn to the back. On this row, your knit stitches are going to be twisted if you knit into the front loop. So you need to knit into the back loop. Then you bring the yarn to the front and slip the next stitch purlwise. Knit into the back loop of the next stitch. And just carry on like that to the end of the row. On the next row, you won't need to knit into the back loop of your knit stitches, but you're still going to slip the purl stitches. So with the yarn in front, you slip your purl stitch, bring it to the back, and just knit the next stitch. Slip the purl stitch, yarn to back, knit the next stitch. This is exactly the same whether you're working a 2x2 rib edge or a 1x1 rib. The next row I'll show you how to rearrange the stitches if you want to create a 2x2 rib. After your 2 tubular rows, you're going to start working your normal ribbing. For a 1x1 rib, you just want to carry on in your ribbing pattern, purling each purl stitch and knitting each knit stitch until your edging is the length you want it to be. For a 2x2 rib though, you're going to need to rearrange the stitches on this row. The first stitch is a purl stitch. You can just purl that normally and then knit the first knit stitch. Now for your 2x2 ribbing, the next stitch needs to be a knit stitch. So you're going to rearrange the next 2 stitches on your left needle. To do this, insert the right needle tip into the second stitch on the left needle and slide both of those 2 stitches off the end of the left needle, and then scoop up the purl stitch with your left needle and return the right stitch to your left needle. And then you can knit the knit stitch, And there will be 2 purl stitches following it. You can purl those, then knit the next knit stitch, and then you're going to rearrange the stitches again in exactly the same way. So insert the right needle tip, slide them both off, then return the stitches in the new order. Then work them until you get to the next stitches to rearrange. You just carry on like that until you get to the end of the row, and you should have your stitches in the correct ribbing pattern. Make sure when you're rearranging the stitches that you're actually following the pattern for your rib. And after that row, you can just carry on working your 2x2 ribbing pattern. There's no reason that you can't work this edging for a circular piece, but you'll need to do a few things. You can work this cast on circular needles, but the actual cast on will end up in a tangled mess if you try to cast on circulars. So you need to work the first few rows on straight needles before bringing in your circular and just working across the stitches. You can then join the round. You'll be left with a little gap at the bottom, but you can sew that up easily enough. Once you've worked several rows, it should look like this. You can see the tubular edge. I find that this method creates a much more elastic edge than a stocking stitch tubular cast on, especially when working 2x2 rib. So it's really good as a cast on for things like sweaters and hats where you need that elasticity.